Right. Hi and welcome. So whether you're watching this live or you're watching the replay, we're really grateful that you signed up to learn a little bit more about this quite complex area that face our children now in 2025. So a really warm welcome and we hope you get a lot out of this a little workshop that we're wanting to run. So I'm Claire. I've worked with children and their families for 30 years in a variety of roles as a therapist. So working in schools has been my predominant activity during that time, and certainly working at the top end of children's mental health for a very long time.
And I'm Tim, I'm Claire's son. I'm a holistic health and wellbeing coach, specialized in the area of men's mental and physical health and neurodivergent health as a whole as well.
Right. So we're going to be covering this mind makers topic today. And there's a lot of information in here. And we really just want to kind of set it out to begin with so we understand what we're dealing with. Of using that analogy of breadcrumbs, what's being put down that children are picking up that is resulting in a range of very complex and challenging behaviours that sometimes end up in schools and classrooms, and certainly can start from the very early years and intensify as children get older and get into those more complex social years of schooling from sort of year 3 upwards. So we want to just make sure that we're tying all of this to digital access, that our children today in 2025, and certainly when Tim and I have been working in schools in the last few weeks, we would put it at 95% of the year fives and sixes that we've been working with are all online and growing up in that online space, connected to each other outside, but also connected to millions of people, which is very different to even when Tim grew up. Certainly your circle of connection was an awful lot smaller than our children are growing up with now. And this digital life access is fundamentally changing how brains are growing, how they're developing. And you will know this from your classrooms. There's going to be no surprises in anything we tell you, because it's not just the child's access to the screen, it's the family access, how that parent is accessing the screen and how that impacts on the child as well. So we just want to run through these, which are interesting studies of late. Um, so the Growing Up Digital in Australia was a big study done by the Gonski Institute in 2021. And none of the statistics there will surprise you that 78% of educators are seeing a change in a child's ability to focus on educational tasks. This is in relation to their on-screen time. 80% seeing a decline in empathy of students and 60% seeing a decline in physical activity. Now, if we follow the breadcrumbs and we go all the way back, serve and return is one of the most fundamental ways that we grow the brain of a child. So from the moment they're born, they are eye contact seeking. Babies, from the moment they're born, will look at an array and find the eyes and focus on those because they are so important for the development as that child is viewing a face and learning to read the expressions and attach them to emotions and see what emotion that brings up in themselves and how they react that child is learning. And we call that empathy. So what's happening on the inside and the outside and impacting the child's feelings. And certainly, I'm sure you'll all agree that children are growing up with different levels of empathy now in the digital age, that as they're getting less face-to-face time and more on-screen time, they are certainly far less empathetic and more able to involve themselves in some fairly noxious online behaviours like bullying, for example. And it really is very directly related to that early developmental requirement that children need to develop that serve and return mechanism that builds their empathy. There's also the social development of the child. And this study on the effects of screen time, this was an international study, involved thousands and thousands of children. And there was this direct correlation between a child's screen time, how much time they are spending on screen, and their ability to interpret and express emotions, and aggressive conduct as well. So a lack of emotional self-regulation. So we know that these little people that you're teaching are certainly growing up in the digital age, and it is having this massive impact at a neurological level, at this social level, at a gendered level. There it says the algorithms on our social media means that girls and boys are exposed to very different content, which can reinforce some very narrow gender norms. And we've talked about that in our Mind Makers incursion with children. And it is phenomenal what children believe. And in fact, Tim, you were telling me the other day about friends.
Yeah, there's countless examples. Even at my age, I've got friends. A couple that I have a close friendship with, a man and a woman. They uh, interact with a post discussing gender norms and how men and women should be interacting with each other. And even the comments underneath the post that they each viewed on their separate accounts was different. The information that was presented to her was different to the information that was presented to him, and it's targeted towards them by an algorithm. There's no overarching big bad at the top who's directing these specifically to people. It's how people are interacting with social media and how the algorithms connect the participants with information. So the Sorry, I didn't understand.
That was Tim's watch, telling him that it didn't understand. We don't understand, actually. It's very hard to understand. I think that's universal. So yes, it's very interesting how these algorithms are very powerful and can create these echo chambers for children and their parents as well. But it's so impactful on the development of the brain in these very formative years in a child's life. And we can't go past talking about the impact of development if we don't look at the child's sexual health and development. So even in primary school, it's very important that we acknowledge that, especially for your tweens in your fours, fives and sixes, much higher levels of estrogen and testosterone, of course. And, when children are online, they're accessing a whole lot of content that they wouldn't otherwise. So the Common Sense Media study up there from 2023 says that our average first exposure to pornographic content, inappropriate content, is 12. And anecdotally, it's certainly a lot younger than that. It's closer to 8. 52% of those children have seen violent pornography. 45% believe that this is actually helpful and healthy information about sex. So when we're talking about how impactful this is on the developing brain, it's just enormous. And of course, it's turning up in your classrooms in a series of very complex behaviours. So let's have a look at online influence. So obviously, young people are very easily influenced, and as they're going through their development, as they're going through their stages of moral development, the influence of peers is growing in importance, certainly in these years, in your year 4, 5s and 6s. It's very important what they're watching and how that's moulding and shaping their brain. What are those crumbs that they picking up? What path are they following? So this survey that they did, again, a big international survey in 2024 with 81% of children, so they're talking about primary school age children, are watching YouTube. That's where they're getting a lot of their content. 60% video on demand, 45% video games, 44% TikTok, but then we've got to look at other social media. TikTok is pretty huge at the moment. And 39% broadcast TV, which had a different feeling to it, because generally it was family viewing, that families sat and watched TV together. So there was a bit of unpacking of content with families. So that was seen to be the least impactful as well. But it's also the least seen medium, that children are spending a lot of time by themselves, face on screen, and being influenced. And it's not just that there's these millions of influences out there getting into the heads of our children about all aspects. They are product placing so that they make money while our children are buying from them. It's interesting, Tim and I were talking about earlier that the age verification that we've got, the 13 plus, on most social media accounts is not actually about protecting the child. It's about that's when you're legally able to sell to the child, to advertise content to them. So that's why they've chosen the 13 plus. It's got nothing to do with our children. It's got everything to do with money and sucking it out of our children. So the the this is lyrics from the song Molly on the Beach. This was the most popular song as voted by children in 2023 on YouTube. So you can imagine what the visuals look like for this. There's a lot that you can read in there, and I hope you're as horrified as I am about what's influencing our little children. So it's highly sexualized. There's choking and violence in there. There's oral sex, which goes well beyond a healthy discussion about it into some really, I mean, this is just some of the lyrics that I've put up there for you. It's pretty horrendous what's influencing our children, and once you get that content into a little brain, it's very difficult to get that content out of a little brain or to make it healthy and information that helps the child to develop in a way that contributes, to their behaviour in a positive way. So the next slide that we've got here, you'll recognise this influencer, Andrew Tate, and certainly he's had a huge influence on our boys. And we are talking about primary school age boys. The latest series from Netflix, Adolescence, really does explore the rise of the manosphere. And if you haven't done a bit of reading about this, I'd really encourage you to just pop online, write down some of these terms and have a look, because it is impacting our children daily. If they're on socials, which, as we were saying when we were in schools, almost every child is, it's the rare child that's not on some sort of online access with a social component. They are seeing this and it is changing the way they think. So I'm just going to let Tim run you through this whole concept of the manosphere and how it's impacting our young boys and men.
So online, where kids are accessing this information from influencers, kind of like Andrew Tate, they're being presented with a lot of these concepts like incel culture, red pill culture, and the 80-20 rule, and finding out about what all of these mean has created a lot of issues in young men and how they perceive themselves and the people around them. So Andrew Tate offered the 80-20 rule, which is also brought up in the Adolescence Netflix show, which suggests that 80% of women are attracted to 20% of men, so targeted towards the most sexually successful for men. And if you don't fall into that top 20% of men, then you won't be you will not be a sexually successful man in the world around you. So the way that these concepts are then used to change the way children and men and boys perceive themselves is that once this becomes a part of their identity, they identify themselves as part of the 80% of men that won't be sexually selected for. It becomes a permanent state in their identity, and it changes the way they interact with other people in the world. So for example, when a young man thinks that they belong to the 80% and they aren't able to change anything about themselves, it means that the onus is no longer on them to create positive change in their life. It becomes about impacting the outside world to change how the world works in response to their internal state. So rather than building healthy social skills and healthy relationship skills, they look to influencers who give them alternative solutions for what to do with their feelings and what to do with their thoughts, and how to go about interacting with the world, which is often not very successful for developing healthy relationships with themselves, with other people, and it changes the way that they think about themselves and how the world works as a whole. Um, down the path from here, it leads to a whole lot of very complicated behaviors that stem from these really complicated feelings that are being peddled by influencers like Andrew Tate. So this leads to all sorts of really harmful behaviors, violence towards women and violence towards peers around us, not being able to connect with our internal states or the internal states of the people around us, and not being able to develop self-regulation tools and techniques for emotional self-regulation.
So, I guess we're talking about primary school age children. But when Tim and I are running the Mind Matters workshop for children, it's absolutely fascinating that, we ask children to stand up and sit down around thinking like boys are natural leaders. Mhm. Girls are gossipers. So we do girls are gossipers, girls are into what they wear, girls need to be led, boys are strong and powerful. And the agreement with that is it's mind-blowing, isn't it, Tim? I
Mm.
mean, we're in 2025 and we're supposed to be moving forward with gender equality. Um, and really, we're going backwards at a rate of knots. And there's been a lot of societal pressure around that. The Me Too movement, the talking about, being a privileged white male. And these influencers are saying, well, that's not true. That's not true. We've been disenfranchised and disempowered and demasculinized, and it's time to rise up and take it all back. And we can subjugate women, even those who don't find us attractive, we can do it anyway, which is certainly a very big part of this dialogue and certainly a big part of what even our little boys are being exposed to in the online space. It is rife right now and definitely worth a discussion in your class if you've got year 5 and 6 children, is even just to ask them what they know about it. What does it mean? Because they have an awful lot of knowledge that certainly Tim wouldn't have had at the same age, and I definitely wouldn't have had at the same age. So that leads us to this real need to grow the emotional intelligence of our children in the digital age. It is more essential now than it ever has been historically. And yes, children have been exposed and influenced by a lot of things over many generations since television, and there's all sorts of ways that children have been influenced, but not on the scale that children are influenced now. And when we were talking about those picking up the crumbs, what is it? Where's that trail leading us? What are we putting down that children are picking up? We're certainly finding that, children are arriving in school emotionally less mature than they would have been even a decade ago. Because there's lots of parenting where, end of the day, everyone's tired, life is busy, they've been doing a million things. And instead of letting the child deal with their disappointment or their sadness or their letdown, or their brothers use their bike, or they want to have a tantrum because they haven't got the dinner they want, instead of letting the child go through that and learn to manage the emotion, a device is handed over, which saves the family having to experience that big emotional state. But it's vitally important for human minds that that happens. So you're getting children in classrooms who often haven't practiced the skill of emotional self-regulation. They haven't ever had the opportunity to go from one end to the other end of emotion and to sit with it and to change their thinking and to learn to manage their emotions. And we're finding that, children are arriving in classrooms with heads so full of online content, all the things that they're influenced by, whether they're playing Roblox or League of Legends, or whether they're chatting online, they're on TikTok, they're watching videos, they're on YouTube, whatever they're doing, they're arriving with all of that content in their heads. And instead of dealing with situations as they arrive, children are often now escaping to the digital world, which doesn't allow them the space to create the mind making that we talk about with children. So these are lovely words that you can use in your classroom, and we would really encourage you, especially with your older children, to have these sorts of discussions about being a mind maker, where you think about your thinking and you think about how that impacts your feelings and your behavior, because that's how it always runs, right? Our thinking impacts our feelings, which impacts our behavior. That's how it goes. When we're a mind maker, we create enough space to be able to examine our thoughts, to become a critical thinker, to apply logic and rationality to our thinking, to slow down and turn things over. And we've got people who help us, we call them mind mentors, who might help us change our thinking. Like, well, if you think about that a different way, maybe instead of, thinking that he hates you, you could think that you might need to practice your skills in this area and then you'd be included. So, mind mentors like coaches and teachers and parents and even friends, children always nominate friends as mind mentors, help them to grow their minds in positive ways. And mind mentors are the people who do exactly the opposite, who get in there and take up space in your head and change the way that you think about things in unhelpful and negative ways. So they're lovely words to use with children. Children get them. And it's excellent. So Tim, in the incursion we do, Tim gives examples from his schooling of mind mentors and mind melters and how they changed his behaviour over many, many years until he was able to sit back and reflect on it and to change his thinking, change his feelings, and then change his behaviour. These are really lovely terms. We find that, the I'm bored that children love to come up with now in homes is often met with a device. So instead of giving a child time to be in their own head, to do their own thinking, to have some space, they don't. They're into that device, and so they just sort of technology out their feelings. And if you have space in your classrooms to have this daily practice of becoming a mind maker is pretty important. And we're going to run you through some strategies in a moment. So we're bringing up these children in a highly influential world, a world that's grabbing their attention and really pushing it towards these influencers who are making money out of our children. And the more that it happens, the brain loves it, right? You get this big dopamine hit from being online, being on screen, connecting with people. So brains love it, becomes addictive. So instead of doing the things that help you to chill out and do the thinking and mind your mind, you end up with children who are unable to do that and require external sources of regulation to help them manage state. So we're just going to move into finish with some sort of sticky practices that you can do daily. Because we say that mental health is like dental health. You need to take care of it twice a day. And one of those does need to be at school with a mind mentor, like a teacher, who can help children to open the space to become emotionally more intelligent. So I'll ask Tim just to run you through some of the practices that we talk about and do with children.
Absolutely. And just going a little bit further into what my mom was talking about, the outside world also loves when our attention becomes externalized. When our attention is targeted towards things in our environment, it changes what's going on in the world. It means someone's buying a product. It means someone's engaging with something that somebody's trying to sell or try and use your attention to their advantage for whatever the purpose is. Usually with social media, it's for engagement. Engagement is what earns the most money in on social media and online. So, and the more our attention is externalized, the less we're able to regulate our internal state. And it's such an important skill for us to learn how to understand our internal state and why we're feeling the way we're feeling, and learn skills and techniques to change the way we're feeling. So, an example that I'm using in our workshop is discussing how our physiology impacts what's going on inside our minds. And so one of the skills and techniques that I'm sharing in this workshop is using our breathing and using our body to change what's happening inside our mind. So automatically, when we spend time online and our emotional circuitry is activated and engaged with the information in front of us, it sends us into a sympathetic state and activates our stress response system, which turns our thinking more black and white. It means everything that we're thinking feels far more real, and we become more reactive to the things that we're experiencing, which in turn makes us need more techniques and more skills or more resources to change our internal state. And the easiest way we've learned to do that in the modern age is use technology to change what we're thinking about, to watch a video or play a game or talk to someone online to change what's happening inside our mind. But the skills that I'm bringing to the workshop are using our body and using our mind to change what is happening in our own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So we were able to use our breath to change our internal states. So, like the snow globe example I mentioned earlier, when we are engaged with something outside us, there are thoughts and feelings inside our head, and we're not able to process them all at the same time because we're processing stimulus outside us and the stimulus inside us at the same time. But focusing on our breath, we can let the snow globe settle down, let that snow settle to the bottom. And once our minds calm down a little bit, we can start to put some thoughts in there to come up more often, which is something like a meditative practice. So we can use our breathing to calm down our minds. So slowing down our breath will slow down the rate of thoughts inside our head. And once those thoughts inside our head start to slow down, we can consciously use a practice to help make our thinking more automatic in the direction we want. So that can be something like a gratitude, a kindness, or a compassion meditation. So using our breath to calm ourselves down, and then give us the space to add snow back into the snow globe, but the type of snow that we want. So the type of snow that we want are those feelings, gratitude, kindness, and compassion. So once our mind is a little bit quieter, we can direct our mind to the stimulus that we want. So think of examples of small instances that we were grateful for during the day, and focus on what that feeling is and how to cultivate it and how to bring it into our daily way of seeing the world. So instead of being reactive, instead of that snow globe being shaken up by the things that we're seeing outside of us, we let it all settle down, and then once it's all settled down, we can see through a little bit more clearer, a little bit more clearly, and program some new patterns of thinking and behavior. So that can be something like mindfulness, which is sitting with our internal state and just observing and being non-judgmental about the thoughts and feelings that we're having. And then once we've been able to identify them, rather than reacting to them, we can decide how we would like to respond to them. So sitting calmly with the different thoughts that we're having, and allowing them to settle down for a few minutes while we mindfully pay attention to what's going on inside us, and then directing our attention towards the things that we're grateful for, the people that we feel compassion towards, and cultivating that for more people. It will change the way over time that we interact with the world outside us. So um, once our mind is calm and our thinking switches off from black and white, it becomes a bit more gray, we can start to explore rather than react to the thoughts, feelings that we're having inside us.
So, as part of the workshop that we've been running with children, um, there's probably a couple of observations. So Tim is one of four boys, and these sorts of mind making practices usually come with a bit of activity, jumping on the trampoline, spinning a stick, which Tim does with kids. They think it's pretty awesome. It is pretty awesome, actually. So it doesn't have to be sitting in Zen like the sloth. It can actually be a movement-based mindfulness activity where children do things that they don't normally have the time for. So just some space. It can be with Play-Doh. There's so many ways that you can do it. And it can be these daily, very short, brief practices in classroom. And I guess, what Tim and I have noticed is you can almost pick the kids who struggle with the sitting still, and when we get towards the end and we do the mindfulness practices with the children is the children who have the least skills are mostly the ones who do the giggling and the distracting of their peers around them, because they really are limited in their skill set for being able to manage open space like boredom. So yes, we would really encourage you to think of what are the practices, just coming in from lunch, just having 5 quiet minutes, being able to do a spoken mindful meditation where, you do think of the things that are kindnesses, things that you're grateful for, that redirect the child's mind, that give them space, that allow them to think the thoughts and feel the feelings. And for some children, it'll be the first and only opportunity they get to do that, because when they get home, there'll be lots of devices, lots of busyness, lots of everything until they go to bed, at which point in time, they haven't had that opportunity to grow their minds. And when we do that, it goes backwards. It increases the child's educational and academic capability in the classroom. And it is a skill for life, being in control of your thinking and your emotions, and being able to identify who's influencing that and whether that aligns to your belief system or not is vitally important for our children, with the amount of content that's very negatively impacting their minds in the online space. So I'll just put this information up for you to have a look at. Tim and I are running an incursion series at the moment. If you scan the QR code, you'll be able to find out more about that. We really know that this is very important. In fact, it's vital work with children. And being able to take this into schools is just such an honour and a privilege to be able to work together and to work with children in schools. So if you'd like to know more, please do get in contact. That will take you to the webpage where there's a form you can fill out and get in contact. And if there's anything that comes out of this today that you would like to find out more information about, you can certainly send us an email at hello@digi, which is DIGII, online.com. So hello@digionline.com. And we'd love to hear from you and get back to you as well. So thank you for joining us. And we hope to see you for our next Educator Professional Learning session.
Thank you very much.